Greetings and welcome to Yarnspirations.com. In this video we're going to take a look at the adorable pom-pom crochet hat for babies. It comes in two sizes in the pattern, one that will fit sizes 6 to 12 months and one that will fit sizes 18 to 24 months. To make this hat we're going to need a skein of Bernat Softee Baby Chunky, and we're going to need only one ball for the smaller size but two for the larger size. You're going to need a crochet hook size J 10 or 6 millimeter. Now I am using a K in the video because I of course was trying this out before I had to show it to you, and I personally was having a death grip, so I'm going to go up a hook size. You of course will go to whatever hook size you need to get your gauge. And that's all we need. It's a very, very simple pattern. Now, the foundation chain is here. We're working side to side all the way around, and then we will sew up that side, and it's a mock ribbing. Now, once again, the hat that I'm showing you and the hat on the pattern is black, but I am going to switch to a lighter color so you can see on camera what I'm doing. I also want to let you know that while for the smaller size you're going to chain 30 on the pattern, I'm going to work with a shorter chain because nothing is more tedious in these videos than you guys having to watch me make 30 single crochets in a row. So I'm going to work with a shorter chain just so I can get to the good stuff quicker. So let me get my hook and get started, and I'll meet you right back here. All right, to begin, you're going to chain the number of chains that you need for your size, either 30 if you're making the smaller size, or 32 if you're making the larger size. Remember, I've chained a shorter amount because I want my rows to be shorter so I can work more quickly on camera. So you're going to single crochet in the second chain from hook and in each chain to the last 4 chain. Now, I know that I have talked about this in other videos, but briefly, there is the front of the chain, which looks like V's, and the back of the chain that looks like bumps. I always encourage people to work in the back of the chain or the bumps because it makes a neater edge, particularly for a pattern like this, where we're going to have to sew the last row to the foundation chain. Working in the back or the bump gives you a much neater finish. So second chain from hook, so skip the one closest to the hook, go in the second one, and we're going to single crochet across until 4 chains remain. If you are a die-hard front of the chain user, that's okay. It's not going to kill anything. It's just, I think the back or the bump makes a neater finish. So I'm just going to single crochet across until I have 4 chains left. See what I mean about the finish though? Look how nice and smooth that is, and its elasticity is much more similar to the end. Sometimes when you do your foundation chain in the front of the chain, your foundation row in the front of the chain, it can be a little stiff. Oop, looks like I split. That's why I personally went up to the larger hook, because the J was a little tight for me, but you will use the hook that suits your stitching best. All right, let's keep going till we have 4 left. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have to stitch in the next one. Slip stitch in each of last 4 chain and turn. So slip stitch, slip stitch, slip stitch, slip stitch, turn the work. Second row, chain 1, slip stitch in each of the first 4 stitches, 1 single crochet in the back loop only in each stitch to end of row, turn. So you're going to slip stitch in each of the 4 slip stitches, and then you're going to single crochet back loop only to the end. So here's a slip stitch. We're going to slip stitch, slip stitch, slip stitch, slip stitch, and now single crochet back loop only. So the back loop is way over here. So back loop only, all the way to the end. Remember, your row will be longer than mine. And you may have noted that turning chain is just a turning chain. It does not count as a stitch. So working in the back loop is giving us this ridge, which is what's going to give us this ribbed look to the fabric. I'm going to go all the way to the end of the row, remembering that your row will be longer than my row. And then we're going to turn the work at the end of the row and do the third row. Okay, turn the work at the end of the row, third row, chain 1, single crochet, back loop in each stitch to last 4 stitches, slip stitch in each of last 4 stitches turned. So once again, we're going to work in the back loop, and the back loop is the side of the single crochet that is away from you. And we're going to go keep going until those 4 slip stitches are left, and we're going to slip stitch in each slip stitch. That's all there is to it. You're going to repeat the second and third rows until the work measures 16 or 17 inches, which is 40.5 or 43 centimeters. And you're going to fasten off, leaving a long end. You're going to weave the end through the last slip stitch of each row along the top edge and gather tightly, and I'm going to show you how to do that. But for now, let's realize we're just going to keep repeating the second and third row. So I need to go until there's 4 stitches left. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I only have 4 left, so I'm going to slip stitch. Slip stitch, slip stitch, slip stitch, slip stitch. Now, could you slip stitch in the back loop only? Yes, you absolutely could. In my personal opinion, though, it makes the top too tight. So I'm slip stitching the way I would normally slip stitch and then switching to the ribbing. So I turned the work. I'm going to chain 1, and now I am repeating the second row slip stitch in each of first 4. Slip stitch, 2, 3, 4. There's my 4 slip stitches, and then a single crochet back loop only to the end. So you're just going to keep repeating these rows over and over and over again. Now, a couple things I want to point out. The reason we're doing this, now take a look at the height. The slip stitch area is not going to be as tall as the single crochet area, and that is going to continue all the way around, and the difference between the slip stitched side and the single crocheted side is going to be more and more noticeable. Why we're doing that is so that it folds in neatly and becomes the crown of the hat, so you don't have a big ugly point sticking up. So that's the reason that that's going to happen. And like I said, I'm going to come back and show you how to go through those slip stitches and tighten up the work. So that is the first thing that I wanted to show you. And then the second thing is the way the stitch looks. It's kind of like a corrugation. You can see the ridges on one side, and you can see the same ridges on the other side. So the stitch is reversible, and the reason that's important is when you have a long row, like is suggested in the pattern, as opposed to the shorter row, which I'm doing here on camera, when the hat is finished, you can fold the brim up. So it's important that the stitch is reversible and looks just as attractive on both sides. So you just keep working this pattern over and over and over again until your piece measures the length that it says in the pattern. So I'm going to put a few more rows on so we can talk about the finishing. I'm not going to make the complete hat, but I'm going to make just a few more rows so I have a big enough sample that you can see what we're talking about. And then after we talk about finishing, we'll take a look at the pom-poms. So I'll be right back. 2 more points I want to make. One is when you are measuring the height of your work to make sure that you hit the 16 or 17 inches, 40.5 or 43 centimeters that are suggested in the pattern, that you are measuring this side, the side with the single crochet, not this side, because this of course is shorter than this side. So make sure you're measuring this side when you do your measurements. The second thing I wanted to point out, when you're getting ready to fasten off your work, make sure that you are ending the row with the slip stitches so that the yarn is where we want it to be, not beginning a row with slip stitches. So once again, I'm not going to crochet the whole hat, but I wanted to make sure I had enough that you could see what I'm doing. So I have ended with my slip stitches. I have measured to make sure that everything goes okay, and then before I end off, I'm going to pull out a pretty enormous length of yarn, because I need this yarn to do two things. I need it to finish off the top where I'm going to tighten up the circle, and after that I'm going to need it to sew up the seam. So I'm going to end off my work with a really long tail. So then I'm going to take a seriously large tapestry needle and I am going to thread my yarn into the tapestry needle. I'm going to put the tail right in the eye of the needle. So the first thing I'm going to do is gather. Now, what it says is fasten off, leaving a long end, weave end through last slip stitch of each row along the top edge and gather tightly. What I want you to pay attention to, make sure that you're going through the slip stitches, which are here. You see where my needle's going? I do not want you to be gathering up here, which is the chain one turn, because that's going to make for a sloppy finish. So make sure that you're going in an actual slip stitch and ignoring the turning chain, and try very hard not to split the plies. It's very easy to split the plies because you have your teeny tiny point of your needle, but it's nice to try very hard not to. It'll just make gathering easier. So after you've gone under a few stitches, pull it up. You don't have to gather it till you get till the very end. So I'm going under here, making sure I'm going through the slip stitch and not the chain one turn, and I'm also trying my very darndest to not split plies. If it happens, it's not the end of the world, but it's just a neater finish if you don't. And when I get under 4 or 6 stitches, I'm going to pull the waste yarn through. And I'm going to go all the way from side to side, remembering that yours is going to be much larger than mine. So when I get all the way across, I'm going to gather this tightly, and it's going to form a circle. Pull really, 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 really tight. And you can see even on my small piece that it's forming in, that it's curving in. And this is what I was saying, this gives you the nice smooth curve at the top of the hat. This is the bottom of the hat, and of course you would fold this up for your brim. So pull it very, very tightly. And then what I like to do, I like to go back to the farthest away stitch and just put a little tack right there to kind of hold things tight. I don't want to just hope for the best. I want to take a little pressure off. Take a little pressure off this strand that's holding everything together. So I'm going to give that a little back stitch at the beginning. Remember, of course, yours will be much bigger than mine is right now. After I've got that back stitch neatened up, I'm going to want to sew up the seam. So the first row of stitching is being sewn to the last row of stitching, and you can see why I wanted you to work in the back or the bump of the chain, because these are now even and identical, and it'll be really easy to sew up. Now, one of the things that I like to do that you do not have to do, it's not mandatory, but I think it makes a nicer look, I like to stitch in the back loops of the stitches in the same way that I crocheted in the back loop of the stitches, because I just think it mirrors the look of the work that we already did. So I'm going to look for the back loop of both stitches. And I'm just going to go through my tapestry needle. I'm going to go to the back and to the back. Back, back. And I'm going to do this all the way down to the bottom. And then I'm going to do one more little tack stitch, and then I'm going to weave in this end, and then I'm going to weave in the end from the beginning of the foundation chain, from the beginning of the work. And then the last thing that I will have to do is make the pom-poms. So as I'm stitching, I'm just going to tighten this up a little bit as I go down. Again, yours will be a little bigger, but as you can see, then you get the little ridge on either side of the seam, and it looks like the ridges you have in other places in the work. So back loop, back loop, back loop, back loop, and do this all the way down. Okay, once again, tighten it up a little bit, and there's my ridge, and there's my ridge, and my whip stitch disappears and is not really obvious. So go ahead and finish up your seam, and then let's take a look at these cute little pom-poms. Now, there are all kinds of fancy pom-pom makers on the market, and if you have one, you can go ahead and use it. But we're going to kick it old school today and do it the way we all learned when we were young and didn't have all these fancy tools. So all I'm going to do is wrap the yarn approximately 100 times around all 4 fingers. Be careful not to pull too tight, because of course you can hurt your fingers and cut off circulation, so you don't want to do that. So you're going to go round and round and round approximately 100 times. Well, I've already lost count, so I'm going to go until it's a little bit thicker. Pull some more yarn out of my ball here. But it's good to count when you're making these, so that you count to a number on the first pom-pom, and then you count to the same number on the second pom-pom, so they are the same size. If you do not count, one might wind up to be a little bit bigger than the other. All right, this is good enough for now. You're going to clip the yarn at the bottom. Now it says tie in the center. Now I pre-cut my tie and I made it nice and long because I want it to have some inches of it left, because I can use the ties to attach the pom-pom to the hat. So slip the folded yarn off of your fingers, and then you're going to tie it around the center. Leave a good amount of yarn on either side, and if you have somebody at home to help you, this is a good place to grab them. You want to tie this as tight as humanly possible, because the tighter it is, the poofier it gets, and the less likely any little ends are to come out. So I'm going to use my finger to hold that first one down, and then I'm going to tie a second square knot on top of my first one. So make sure that first one is seriously tight, and then not the second one on top of it. So you can see this is very, very tightly held. Next thing to do is to take your sharp pointy scissors and cut all the folds. So wherever it folded over the top of your finger or the bottom of your fingers, you're going to trim it. And you want to make sure you get all the folds. See, it's really easy to kind of miss the ones in the middle. All right, that's one side. Now remember, I didn't quite go 100, so yours will be tighter and poofier than mine was, because I just wanted to get to the fun part. So once again, make sure there's no folds, make sure you've trimmed through everything. Now, oh, there's a couple more folds over here. You want to hang on to this one long strand, put it in your hand so you do not trim it, because you're going to use that to attach the pom-pom to the hat. But otherwise, if anything's hanging off and just doesn't look neat enough, or it looks a little uneven, you just trim it. Again, you'll have a lot more threads on yours. And just as a matter of course for any kind of pom-pom, the closer, see there's a fold I missed, I'm going to cut that. The closer you cut to the center, to the tie, the tighter the pom-pom looks. But again, I'm just trying to make it look neat and even. You don't have to go bananas. Just if anything is hanging out that looks longer than everything else, just give it a little haircut. And if you need to, you can give it another little haircut once it's on the hat and on the baby. So all you need to do now is thread this end that you have left onto your tapestry needle and sew it right onto the hat. But because it's already part of the pom-pom, you've only got the one end to weave in when you're finished. So I hope you have enjoyed hanging out with us for the adorable pom-pom crochet hat. These are terrific gifts, very simple to make, and they're a lot of fun. Try them in all the colors of Bernat Softee Baby Chunky. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again soon.